Hi, this is Brian with Backpack Tactics, and today I want to talk about creating a good password. We all have to deal with passwords, many passwords, on a daily basis, and one of the banes of our existence is having to try to come up with good ones. The problem is we want passwords to be easy to remember, but we want them to be hard enough to not be crackable. So how do we do that? Well, there are a couple basic rules I want to share with you, and then we'll talk about a couple other things that you might want to keep in mind too. So, first of all, some things that you will not do. Don't use the word password. Don't use any names, your name, a relative's name, your kids' names. Do not use significant dates, your kids' birthdays, your anniversary, anything like that. That's pretty popular too. I see that all the time. Anything to do with your pets, that one's a little bit harder for someone to crack, I guess, than a kid's name, but it's still pretty crackable. In fact, I would even say don't even use real words. Try to avoid that too. Stuff that's in the dictionary is something that password cracking engines are usually savvy to, and they will be able to crack your password. So, what can you do? Well, the basic thing is you want something that's not guessable about you. Something that you would know, but that no one else would really be able to guess. So, one thing is, let's just say I like wombats. So, I'm going to put wombat crossing as my password. You also want it to be at least 8 characters. And the more the merrier, because the more characters you have, the harder that thing is to crack. Alright, so this is kind of like my base, but I want to build on this. So I want to do multiple different cases, so let's make these S's capital. We want numbers in there. Maybe I'll change this S to a 5. It kind of looks like an S. And maybe I could change the O to a 0. This is kind of an old trick to change some letters into numbers that look like those letters. It's called leet speak. And most password crackers are pretty savvy to that, so you want to add more complexity to your password than just that. So we want to also add special characters as well. So how about instead of the word bat, I'll just kind of put in something that could look like a bat. How about that? A slash. Perhaps some programs are not going to accept that. Maybe you could use an underscore or something like that. Something that kind of visually represents a bat. But notice how I'm making this look less and less familiar as I go, and this is kind of the process that you should try to go through. Now, I also said don't use words that are in the dictionary. Well, these are no longer words that are in the dictionary, but you might want to also add some intentional misspelling. So let's try spelling wombat with 2 M's, for example. Maybe I'll even go a step farther and say those M's kind of look like 3s on their side, so maybe I'll replace the M's with 3s. Something like this. So notice how it's getting less and less familiar. Another option too is maybe you know some other languages. You can mix and match languages too. That's always a nice trick that makes a password very nicely uncrackable. You basically want this to be easy enough and familiar enough that you don't have to write it down and you can just remember it. You never ever want to write something down because that will completely compromise your security. No writing down. And you want it to be something that if an outsider looked at it, it would look like it's completely random. Another thing to mention is you may have passwords for several different services. You probably do. So, for example, you may have a login in several different online services or on your work computer versus your home computer, things like that. The tendency is to just kind of make all of your passwords the same, use the same password for everything. But one way that you can avoid doing that is, because that makes it a lot easier. It's easier to remember, and you can easily type it in because you're used to that particular password. But it compromises your security so bad that it's good to find a workaround. And one workaround for that is to simply add as a suffix at the end or a prefix at the beginning of kind of your base password something that pertains to the particular system that you're logging into. So let's say I have I'm logging into an Amazon account. Well, maybe I'll put an A for Amazon at the end of that password. Well, maybe I have a couple different services that I log into that start with A, so maybe I'll make it, I want to make it something a little bit more complex, maybe AMZ, something like this. Better yet, attach something to the password that's just related to the particular service that you're logging into. So maybe when I think of Amazon, I think of rainforest. So I could put that, or J for jungle. Something like this could help to differentiate your passwords a little bit so that none of them are exactly the same, but also keep it easy to remember and pretty quick to type in. Another thing that people find to be really annoying is that a lot of times, especially on a work computer, something like that, you have forced password updates, like every couple months or something like that. You have to update your password, and people hate that because they don't want to have to establish and then remember a new password. Well, one workaround for that is to simply attach something at the end or at the beginning, again, something that pertains to the month that you established that password. So if it were January, you could put 01. Or if it were February, you could just put Feb or FB, some kind of non-standard abbreviation. If it's March, you could be like Patty for St. Patty's Day because that's in March. Something like that. Something that is kind of on a rotation so that you can remember it and it pertains to when you set up that password. So these are just a couple tricks to establishing a good password that is complex enough to not be crackable, but easy enough that you can remember it. This is Brian Roman with Backpack Tactics. Thanks for listening.